you take a look at the diagram, you can see that the wing on the nose has to be established. Now we establish that by simply pushing in a gouge to create the back of that wing. Okay, so it's very simply done. So now we're that established the location of it, but now we're going to start to give it a bit of shape. So in order to give it shape, if you start the gouge fairly flat and push it, the idea is to meet where you put the previous stop cut. So it's very simply done. If you just push it, and that creates the roundness on the back of that wing. I don't know whether I can get that. Yeah, that kind of shows it there. You can also round it over with a knife if you like, but I find that that's the easiest. So using the same gouge, if you use the same gouge, you can come in on the back side and remove a bit of the material on the back side, and that helps to emphasize that nose. It gives it more depth. That make sense? Now we'll go on, and so if you start above the wing on the nose and use that same gouge, you can start to remove a little bit of material towards the front of the nose, and that helps to create the bulbous effect of the tip of the nose by eliminating some wood here, and also to emphasize the wing of the nose. It makes the wing of the nose pop out. You can also remove a little bit more material coming down the side below the wing, and that all contributes to giving that a bit more definition. So while you're still at it, from the top of the wing starts the smile line, so emphasize that smile line by putting a V-tool in there and just removing a bit of wood. Okay, so if you look in the diagram, you'll see that there's a indication of a nostril in there. He's got to be able to breathe, so it's a little bit of an indentation there to indicate that he's got to have some sort of a nostril. So if you look at the spacing there, the wing is created, and then there's a nostril. So give it a little bit of a spacing, and then you can put another stop cut in, and you can see how that gives him a nostril right away. That can be enhanced a little bit with a knife, but this particular gouge is rounded on the end, more of a fingernail effect, and it happens to be a number 7 10 millimeter. So if you have something similar, that's fine. So put it in, drive it in, give it a bit of a twist, and then you can remove that hunk of material pretty easily. Same on the other side. So after you get the nostril established, then work on getting all the flat edges removed. There's still flat edges up here that I've got. You can create a bump in the nose if you want to create a bump in the nose. This guy has a different nose. It's just a swooping nose, but yours may be different. But get rid of all the edges and carve off all the saw cuts, and even just remove a slight edge here. You don't want to lose your shadow line, but get rid of all the sharp edges all the way around, even underneath the nose. Get rid of all those saw cuts. Then we'll work on the mouth. Okay, so let's talk about the mouth area for a second here. In order to get the mouth area, I work my way from the top down. This guy has a whole set of teeth. Your carving that you're doing may not have any teeth. But make that top lip round, and it tapers. It goes back underneath the nose, so that the lip itself sits out a little bit. all lips have a bit of an angle to them, so you don't want to have too sharp of an edge. But what I do is I create the top lip, and then I'm going to seat how the teeth are going to fit in there. So I don't worry about detail, just get the shape. So if you can see here, I'm going to work a little bit more at getting the shape of the top lip more tapered in, and then I'm going to take a little bit of the edge off of this guy, both sides, and then the teeth are kind of bowed. In order to emphasize those teeth, I want to nearly give them a sweep the opposite way so that they stick out more. It gives the appearance of the real buck teeth. And you'll notice that you've got a lot of space on this particular carving for teeth, but there's still very few teeth. Less teeth is more because it emphasizes the teeth. The size of the tooth is much bigger. However, there's exceptions to that, and that, Rodney, you're doing one there that has a lot of very fine teeth. What's that guy's name?
Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns.
Mr. Burns. And he has teeth like crazy. Most often when you have teeth, multiple numbers of teeth, it makes the carving look mad, angry. So be aware of that. So first thing, get the shape of the top lip and the top teeth. So I don't know whether you can notice the difference in that or not, but I've hollowed out a little bit above it. I've taken the edge off of the top lip, and I've swooped in and cleaned up those teeth so that they're more pronounced to make them sit out a little bit better. Okay, so all the way around. Something like that. Okay, let's talk about the teeth. In order to set up the teeth, this guy has got a lot of teeth, big teeth. So the first thing I do is I put a stop cut underneath the top, between the gum, or the top lip rather, and the teeth itself. That becomes important later on when I want to divide the teeth up to have a nice clean cut in there. So it also creates a nice shadow line. So that's the first thing I will do. The next thing I do is divide the teeth. Now you got to divide the teeth in half in the center. So your center line comes into play again. So I'll put a center line straight down to restore that. And now if you take a look at the teeth here on the diagram, you can see that they are not straight. They are wider at the bottom and narrower at the top, and they got different odd shapes about them. But there's not many teeth, so try and keep your number of teeth to a minimum. That makes them a happy camper. So I'll go ahead and mark that out and then show you. So it looks something like that. If you follow the teeth around, you got really big teeth at the front, and as it goes towards the back, they're skinnier, not quite as wide. So you can play around with them. Remember that it's not all that important that one side matches exactly with the other side, because you cannot see both sides at the same time. You can get away with a bit of trickery. Okay, I'll go ahead and put my stop cutter across the top now. So in order to carve the teeth, the first thing I did was I put a stop cut across the top, marked them all out the way I thought they should be, try and get them relatively the same on both sides, but it's not absolutely necessary to do so. Now I've seen lots of people just use a V-tool to go up and separate between the teeth. However, over time I've decided that that's not the best way to do it. I like to put a stop cut down the middle. Now you would think you'd be able to come down on a bit of an angle on both sides and take that chip out, but I find that if you don't put a stop cut, make it a 3-cut, and put a stop cut down the center like yay, if you don't do that first, then the darn tooth will move on you. So by putting that in and taking that little piece out there, and then coming over and doing the same on the other side, you create a much better tooth. And can you see that there's a nice shadow there, and it didn't move one way or the other. So do that all on the mall. So the reason why we had that stop cut at the top is that that chip then will come out because there's a stop cut right at the top. Also, later on we can reshape those teeth however we want them. Okay? So there it is with the up and down cuts done on all the teeth. And you can see that they got nice shadows in there all the way up to the gum. But teeth don't end there, they end at the bottom, so we have to create the bottom of a tooth as well. So I spend a bit of time and take a little bit of wedge out of that, and I round over the end of the tooth just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more texture, if you want to call it that. And it's very similar to what it is in the diagram. You can see in the diagram that there's various shapes at the bottom of the teeth. So it's important to spend a bit of time. Not everybody has uniform teeth, and the uglier the guy, the more uneven the teeth are going to be. So take a bit of time to remove a bit of wood on the bottom. You can use a V-tool if you want to get started, or I just use a knife. So you can see the difference here. I haven't addressed any of the ends on this side here, but if I turn it over and look at the other side, and you can see how much different it is. I've changed some of the levels of the teeth as well as the ends of the teeth so that he's made them a little bit more ugly, that's all. So you can play around with that a little bit. I'll pass this around. So there it is with the top teeth more or less set the way I want them. And you can see he's a pretty ugly cat. Now I did hollow out a little bit underneath, leave a width for the teeth, but you can hollow out a little bit underneath. That gives a little bit more shadow to give the appearance that the teeth are sitting there all by themselves. You won't likely see that once you've completed your carving, because if you paint it, you'll either paint that black or a very dark red inside so that it creates that shadow that you want. So the next thing is to address the bottom teeth on this guy, and you can see that they're quite a bit smaller. And most importantly, that they do not match, they don't line up with the top teeth. Our top dentures do not line up with our bottom dentures. They just don't.
Is that why we have all the problem chewing?
Well, some people might have problem chewing. Biting may be a problem. But if you notice, even in the, you'll see it in the detective series, that bite marks can be identified to a person because each tooth is a little bit different from one person to the next. It's like fingerprints. Anyway, so the same thing applies. The only thing that's going to line up is the center mark. Your center mark when it starts to divide, and that'll line up with the top one, and then line them up, and you'll find that there's more teeth usually on the bottom because they're smaller and to fill in. I'm not quite sure what this guy's going to end up looking like, but we'll mark it out and then show you how that goes. So there he is there with an attempt to try and make them a little bit not match the top ones. And now I'll make them uneven on the bottom and maybe change some shapes a bit.
The only chance that these have winning the Stanley Cup is they put Don Cherry as coach.
There is the bottom teeth more or less set up. I've tried to make them as ugly as the top ones. Something like that. I'll hollow out some underneath in here to give it a bit more of a shadow. And then I guess next week we'll work on the bottom lip and the chin and somewhat of the collar in that general area.